I never thought someone else's first day would become my last. My name is Lucas. I worked for the same company for 14 years. Never late, never a missed deadline. I watched that company grow from a cramped little office to a sleek, high-rise downtown. I poured my heart into it. Sacrificed weekends, birthdays, even a few relationships, because I believed in what we were building. But none of that mattered when the boss's son walked in with something to prove. His name was Daniel, 26, cocky smile, designer shoes, and a title he hadn't earned. Director of Operations. He got it the moment he graduated, not because of his skills, but because of his last name. On his very first day, he walked into our morning meeting unannounced. Didn't knock, just barged in, sat at the head of the table, and said, "Let's see what kind of dead weight I'll be trimming." Everyone laughed nervously. I didn't, because I already knew how this story ends. I just didn't know I'd be the first chapter. From that day forward, Daniel made it his mission to undercut me. He reassigned projects I had initiated. He changed directions on campaigns without understanding the basics. And worst of all, he started planting little seeds of doubt in his father's ear. Lucas isn't adapting well to new systems. Lucas missed that deadline, you know. Lucas still does things the old way. All lies, all deliberate. I started noticing strange things. Tasks I'd completed disappearing from folders. Memos I never received. Meeting invites that conveniently never showed up in my calendar. At first, I thought I was losing it. Maybe I was burning out, but then I overheard him one day in the hallway, laughing with another executive. I just need him out. Old guard mentality. Once he's gone, I'll rebuild the team my way. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because I realized I'd spent 14 years being loyal to a company that was about to toss me aside to inflate someone else's ego. So I made a decision. If I was going down, I wasn't going quietly. But I didn't rush. I didn't storm into HR. I didn't start printing resumes. I prepared. Daniel had underestimated me. You see, during my years with the company, I'd quietly built something most people didn't even realize. Relationships. Deep, trusting relationships with our biggest clients, vendors, and even legal partners. I wasn't just a middle manager. I was the silent bridge, holding a lot of things together. I began documenting everything, every deleted file, every misleading report, every directive from Daniel that contradicted company policy. I kept backups, forwarded emails to my private account, and even recorded a few of our private meetings. Because in our state, it's legal as long as one party consents. And I did. 2 weeks later, it happened. A Friday, end of the day, Daniel walks in with a smug look and a folder. "We're restructuring," he said, pretending to be sympathetic. "You've been a great asset, Lucas, but your position is no longer needed." Just like that, 14 years erased in 5 seconds. But I didn't blink. I stood up, shook his hand, and I smiled, because I knew something he didn't. I had the final say. That weekend, while he probably celebrated at some overpriced rooftop bar, I got to work. First, I contacted every major client I had a relationship with, not out of spite, but to let them know I was no longer their point of contact. Every single one of them expressed concern. A few were furious. One even said, "We only work with your company because of you." Then I spoke with legal. Quietly, privately. I showed them the documents. I had proof of manipulation, sabotage, unethical practices, even a couple of potential legal violations that Daniel had either committed or tried to cover up. They were interested. Next, I made one final call to the company's largest partner, a global firm that accounted for nearly 35% of our revenue. I'd been their main liaison for nearly a decade. They were shocked, and within 48 hours, they sent an official notice. We would prefer to pause all collaborative projects until this transition is explained. The board panicked. The CEO, Danielle's father, called me personally. For the first time in years, he sounded tired, defeated. "Lucas, what's going on?" I told him. Everything. He listened. And then, for a few long seconds, he said nothing, just sighed, and finally said, "I didn't know," to which I replied, "That was the problem." Voice slows, reflective with weight. Daniel lasted another 2 weeks. The board forced him to resign, to preserve company image. But we all knew what that meant. He was escorted out one rainy Tuesday morning, avoiding eye contact, coat slung over his arm. No crowd to cheer him on. They offered me my position back, with a raise. I declined. I had already moved on. 2 of our former clients had asked me to consult for them independently. I agreed. And in just a few months, I was making more, working less, and finally felt respected for the value I brought, not for the politics I avoided. Funny how life works. Daniel tried to fire me to impress his father, but in the end, I had the final say. Voice firm, inspiring. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about knowing your worth, about not panicking when the ground shifts under you, about being the quiet force in the background until the moment comes to rise. If someone out there is watching this and feeling powerless because someone above you thinks they can erase you, don't fold, prepare, stay quiet, stay sharp, and when the time comes, make your move. You don't need to scream to win. Sometimes, the loudest victory is the one whispered in the aftermath.